You guys know how much I love talking about Cereal Box. Some great stories on there. They started doing Marvel stories, like a couple years ago, I think it was. When I saw Black Panther up there, I'm like, I've got to talk about this at some point. Black Panther Sins of the King is happening right now. And a couple of the writers that are a part of that are with me right now. It's Tananarive and Steve Barnes. How are you doing?
We're doing
Hey,
great.
we're doing great.
How are
And you
you?
did great on that
Doing
name.
great. Hey, I'm just trying my best here. I'm just trying to survive in a name in a land of names where it's hard for me to pronounce, and it's difficult for me. But I'm glad I got it. I'm glad I got it. So we're off to a
Ah,
good start.
great.
So T'Challa's a character that really goes far beyond just being the Black Panther. So what's the most exciting aspect of that character for you that you wanted to explore?
Wow, we're getting right into T'Challa.
I'm very aware of the fact that you can have a really good character, but very few characters touch the zeitgeist. Very few characters trigger people as T'Challa did. I have my own theories about why he did. So it was what interested me was telling a story, understanding that there's an audience out there that is starving for stories of T'Challa. The cultural reaction to Black Panther is because he's sui generis. There wasn't anybody like him.
Mm-mm.
He excites something different, and especially among the children of American slaves, the descendants of slaves, the children of the diaspora. You're talking specifically about a set of images that we did not get. So, in respect to that, that's a mighty responsibility because on the surface, you simply have to tell a fun story, an adventure story, people hitting each other in the faces in costumes. But underneath that, you have to ask, what am I up to here? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And I liked that challenge.
And beyond the cultural reaction to T'Challa, which is huge, there's sort of the personal aspect of the conflicted king. He has all this power at his disposal, all this history at his disposal, can do whatever he wants. But Wakanda has been hidden for good reason for so long. And now we've reached that point in history in this project, Marvel's Black Panther Sins of the King, where Wakanda has opened up a bit and is testing a relationship with the outside world. And let's just say the test ain't going that great. So then you're in a situation where you both have to be held accountable for everything you weren't doing in the past, and also taking responsibility for how you walk into the present and the future. And it's a lot for this sort of ethical character. He's ethical without being dry. I love that about T'Challa.
You are a good man with a good heart.
Oh,
It
that's
is
it. Oh
hard
my
for a good
goodness,
man
that
to be
was
king.
so good. And they didn't ask you to narrate. I mean, come on. Really?
Well, that's okay. William Jackson Harper does not
He
need any
did.
help from us.
He
Oh my
did. And
gosh, how
we'll
many
we'll talk
different accents?
we'll talk about him in a couple seconds too, because he was very, very good. But I want to actually ask you about that because you don't come in until I think it's chapter 3 or 4 that starts
Three.
your
Thank
story.
you
It
for
was
that.
3, yes.
Three.
So, but in the first couple of chapters, like you said, things aren't going well. So it's almost like there's this big mess, and then they go, okay, here you go. So what's that collaborative process like, and what was your approach to dealing with those issues that just came up on where your story started?
Well, luckily it had all been hashed out in the writer's room. It would have been sort of catastrophic, and I think Cereal Box understands this, to try to bring in different sets of writers, and then you just sort of pick it up wherever.
Oh, didn't we work on a project
Yeah,
when
we
they tried to
did.
do
Oh my
that?
gosh.
Oh,
my
that's
God.
juicy,
It was,
but we
No,
probably
it
can
was
talk about
horrible.
It was not a Cereal Box
it had
project.
nothing to do with Cereal Box. It was a book project.
It was one of the. It's always those like short writing assignments that turn out to be the
Yep.
most horrible, and that was an example of how you don't do it. So what Cereal Box knew wisely is that we want to bring in Ira Madison III was the lead writer. To come up with the basic template at the beginning. And then we sat in the room and hashed it out over a couple days. And it was intense. It was my first writer's room. And I also wanted to shout out that we had so many great writers. In addition, Jeffrey Thorne, Mohale Mashigo, who's actually an African writer. She's from South Africa, I believe. So that is a big deal for us to I mean, obviously Black Panther is an African-American sort of imaginative creation, even though he was created by white writers, but it's a character that really resonates with African Americans because like Steve said, we don't have that. We were robbed of a sense of history and legacy and lineage.
Yeah, in many ways, T'Challa has exactly what was taken away from Black people. He has his own name. He knows his lineage, his history, his culture, his language. He has his own, his own gods, his own sense of afterlife.
And generational wealth, by the way, that is passed down.
And then there's that. Yeah.
Literally, the stuff I just enumerate that's literally what was stripped away.
Right.
All that's left is just sort of, the computer in the box without any software. And so then if you program that, you can program a computer in a box with anything you want it to be. And that has been non-optimal, for the children of the diaspora. So I think that T'Challa represents paradise lost. And so in doing that, there's a real responsibility, but the primary responsibility is just to tell a good story.
And yeah, when we're up to chapter 3, there is a lot that is going on that T'Challa has to process. There's a big reveal I won't discuss in this interview because it is so big, but that part was really, really fun to write for me personally, because I feel such a connection to the characters. And even though my connection was through the cinematic universe, I have to admit, I was not a comic reader. We're writing in the comic world, but there's so much crossover between those characters that of course I'm seeing the actors I saw in the movie, right? Well, and I'm hearing—
How could you not? Yeah.
Hearing Chadwick Boseman's voice in my head. So just to be able to write dialogue for him, to imagine him in motion, to see him in his power, and to have this huge reveal that we get to write about in episode 3 was a huge thrill.
And I'm actually going to tease that a little bit because I know exactly what you're talking about. So family is a big part of any great Black Panther story. And your first part of your story in 3 and 4 does such a fantastic job with that. So how would you describe that family dynamic and why it works so well in storytelling?
I think the real key is, even though they're comic characters, to just see them as people, is the bottom line for me. I pride myself on creating realistic characters in my own fiction or in my own screenplays that are not related to this one. So just to bring those tools, okay, he's a comic book character named T'Challa, but he's also a man who has been through these experiences. He's had traumas. He has scars emotionally, like all of us do. And when you lean into that, that's where you find the human heartbeat of any character. What have they lost? What are they seeking? What are their goals? Like basic writing 101. What does your character want? And when you understand that, that's when the heartbeat, you can listen, you can almost hear it like thumping in there.
Well, Steve's got the beads, so he's got it covered already. I can see it right there. So he if anybody's got the pulse, he does at this point. Yeah, loving the shirt.
Right.
Now, when I think about Wakanda, and this is just like an outside perspective, I've always kind of seen Wakanda's almost like that proverbial shining city or nation on the hill, it feels like. So that shine kind of dulls, though, in Sins of the King, again, without spoiling anything. So what kind of unique challenge did that actually bring to the story? Because I feel like this is a look at Wakanda that we've never really gotten, in a way.
Well, that's only because we've only seen, Wakanda a couple times. I mean, the fact is that if you want it to actually be an inspiration, then it has to have conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
It has to resemble the real world. If it's too perfect, people can't believe in it. So even though at the same time people say, "Oh no, don't give these people flaws, don't do that." If you don't do that, the writing has no impact at all, because on some level in the back of your head, this does not represent the real world, does not represent real human beings. Real human beings have fears and failings, and they fall down and they get back up. So, in any story, if someone is at a high level, you got two options. One is you tear them down, and the other is you build them up. The option you can't do is it just stays the same. Things were good and they stayed good. That's good. Mm-hmm. And it usually doesn't work. Things are good and it got better. It has to be things were good, it fell apart, and they clawed their way out of that and made things better.
Or do they?
Dun, dun, dun. I like the way. I also love the way he said "clawed your way out," which I'm hoping was completely intentional too. By the way, I love that.
Yes, both the Panther's claws and, of course, Claw, the master of vibration.
Oh yeah, there you go. I love it.
All
Now,
powerful is boring.
Exactly. We're talking to Tananarive and Steve Barnes, of course, of Marvel's Black Panther: Sins of the King, which you can get right now at Serial Box. And you touched on this earlier too. Actually, this isn't a graphic novel. This isn't a comic we're talking about. So you're responsible for bringing these action sequences to life. What's the process like in crafting those elements and helping kind of paint that mental picture that we all know of these characters that we love so much?
Well, that's something that I'm not sure you want to open that door, because that's a specific love of mine, is choreographing action. And the trick to choreographing the action sequence, I remember Jackie Chan talking about this, that during an action sequence, you shouldn't just be moving objects around or moving your hands and legs around. You're expressing the personality. You're doing a mini drama. And Sylvester Stallone, in the Rocky movies, the fight scenes in the Rocky movies, he knew that he was creating a 3-act morality play inside the overall structure of the story. So the question is one of, what is it you're trying to express? So once you have the basic situation, these two groups are going to be in conflict, or these two people are going to be in conflict, then you ask, well, who are they? What are they expressing? What are they saying? They're having a conversation with each other. It's not just tit for tat. It's not just bang, bang. It's bang, emotional reaction, decision, bang, emotional reaction, decision, or between two people who have all their skills and unconscious competence. It is a swirl of action. In the midst of it, there's some part of themselves that's a little disconnected and observing it, or they swirl and then they back away, breathe hard, and each of them then has their emotions and thoughts. So it's the same as any other conversation or a love scene or anything else. It is, what is it that we're trying to express here? What are we trying to reveal about these people? And that's going to express itself in the way they move and how they target, and how much endurance they have, and how much strength they have, and how much ferocity they have, and how much they're willing to die, and what tools they have. And all those different things factor in. And every single character is going to be different. And every time that character expresses themselves combatively, it's going to be different. So it's a lot of fun to play with once you understand that it's just another part of the story. If it does not serve story purpose, it's like a porn scene. You know, there's no personalities going on here. It's just people, smashing up against each other.
Ding dong, pizza's here.
Yeah, that's right. That doesn't,
You've seen that one.
Yeah.
So, but
cool boy.
But yeah, no, it's not that. And I love what you said about expressing the character through the action choreography, because in a lot of ways, isn't that the whole challenge of writing comic characters? Comics are synonymous with action, right? So if it wasn't going to have a lot of action, it would probably be a very different kind of story and a different kind of format.
But the thing that was amazing in Civil War, the Marvel movie Civil War, was that they understood each character. Each character had their own dialogue patterns. They had their own powers. They had their own fighting style. And then you did that Marvel thing, the thing that Marvel comic books perfected, which is to take different characters from different worlds and different capacities and smash them against each other and see what comes out of it. We're going to have the Human Torch fight Spider-Man.
And who's stronger? We all want to know.
And
that's right. Yeah, you're darn right we do.
In what way? Spider-Man is stronger than Captain America, but Captain America just kicked his butt because Captain America had more experience. Infinitely more experience. He just knew he was, Spider-Man was faster, but it didn't make any difference. Captain America knew everything that Spider-Man could possibly do, and just completely, and we loved watching that. We love watching the respect between them. So when you have characters that are trying to kill each other, that's one sort of thing. If you have characters that are trying to dominate each other, that's another sort of thing.
Don't want to hurt each other too badly.
That's another sort of thing.
Yeah.
And is there respect? Is there antipathy? Is there rage? What is it that they're feeling? How do they think? How do they strategize? And then use of territory, use of the environment. It's that too. So you've got thinking, feeling human beings in conflict with each other, and it should never. Two fight scenes should never look the same,
right?
Ever. Is it going to be objective, the way it looks from the outside? Is it going to be subjective, the way it feels? Subjective to who? Which person? Subjective to the protagonist, to the attacker, to a neutral witness, God's eye view? What is it?
Wow, so you're kind of hot the way you talk about that.
You got all these different possibilities, and that's even before you get into all the fun of what kind of martial arts style. I've done martial arts for almost all my life at this point. I've studied a lot of different things, so it's fun to take this piece from here and this piece from here and this piece from the Philippines and this from China and this piece from Africa and this piece over
will
here.
know it all.
Yeah, he will. Yeah, he will.
Right.
And
right.
What's exciting for me as someone who didn't grow up reading comics, there's still a lot of Black Panther comics I haven't read. And I suspect there are a lot of listeners who are like me, who came to Black Panther through the movies rather than the comics. So even though our project, Marvel's Black Panther, Sins of the King, is set in the comic universe, there's enough that's familiar to people who just love the movies, whether it was Civil War, getting your first glimpse, or Black Panther. They'll feel like they're at home too, which I think is exciting because it helps, I think, bring new readers to the comics. It's sort of a bridge. So we're a written project, enhanced audio, not quite a comic book, not quite a movie, so it's kind of a bridge.
You were, when you were describing the action sequence, that reminded me of one very specific scene in one of your stories that I can't talk about because I can't spoil it, but it was two characters that you'll know from the movie, by the way, and an action sequence between the two of them, and you just described it beautifully. So when people actually read or listen to this, you'll picture that when you do.
Well, you want to do all the work so that the reader just gets to experience the fun. You don't want them to think, wow, that's well choreographed. You want them to think, wow, that was exciting.
Yeah, and it was. And it totally was. And there was a nice climactic moment in there. You guys, again, when you get there, I think it's in number 4. When you get there, you'll get there and you'll understand.
Okay, great.
Sounds good.
So
I'm in. Listen again myself.
There you go. I'm a very unapologetic Shuri fan, especially from the movie. I think movies gave me a better appreciation for her character. What was it like to actually give her a little bit more of a spotlight in this story?
That was fun. I don't think a lot of people realize that Shuri didn't come along in the comic universe until Reginald Hudlin created her. So you have to give a shout out to Reggie Hudlin for knowing that we needed a Shuri. And then, of course, Ryan Coogler did a great job of characterizing her in the film. So that is no doubt a favorite character for so many people, someone who is smart, but also I think we see more of her action side. She had some action stuff going on in Black Panther, but she's more than just a brain. She, has wanted to compete against T'Challa in Reggie Hudlin's comic, and so she's a very exciting character. She's fun to write, and that relationship, that kind of hero worship, but at the same time I'm going to rib you kind of relationship is always fun to write too.
And quickly, before I let you go, we're here at the beginning of Black History Month, and there's a lot of influential individuals that will be justly celebrated this month. Even as a fictional character, though, what role do you think Black Panther plays, and all the characters in that mythos? What do you think? What kind of a role do you think they play in Black culture as a whole?
It's so funny. Of course, you remember how we lost our minds when the movie came out, dressing up and going to see it multiple times with friends, and we've seen all the gifts of the celebrating school kids, and I think it was a really much needed moment of cultural celebration and lightness when there were a lot of things going on that made us feel like, oh my God, I wish we could just move to Wakanda. If only Wakanda were a real place and we could actually live there. And I think a lot of us as African Americans, and really a lot of us, period, feel a longing for a sort of more perfect version of our world, one where there's no this or that or the other. And Wakanda can just be whatever we project on it, and it's very healing, I think, to imagine a sort of a semi-utopian space like that is safe.
I think that T'Challa was the first fully actualized Black man in comics, the first fully actualized Black superhero. All the others, none of the others had their own names, created their own powers, or their powers came from their culture. All the other Black, whether you're talking about War Machine or all the rest of them, I'm sorry, his name Rhodes, that's not an African name. Falcon, Falcon got his powers. They were handed to him by Captain America and Black Widow, and made by the army. All of those characters were beholden to the very people who stripped away their identities. Every single one of them, to get the joke. If your last name was Lumumba, that would be approximately the same situation. So Black Panther represents Paradise Lost in the sense of he is what people can fantasize. He is what we might have been had we not been crippled in those ways. And every culture creates its stories of heroes. And they create mythologies that connect them directly to the divine, directly to the afterlife, to be able to answer that question, what are we? Where do we come from and where are we going? And so Black Panther is unique in that sense. I don't know of another character that has done that, especially one that has become a cultural touchstone. So I think that he's very important. That's the reason why I'm praying that they will recast that role and not just pass it to Shuri, which a lot of people want. I think that an actor dying should not kill the character, and that's how I feel about it. And I don't know what they're going to do, but I hope they don't make a mistake.
Well, there was no mistake in this story. I could tell you that right now. Marvel's Black Panther: Sins of the King. You can listen to it and or read it. I actually did both. I was reading along while the narration was going from William Jackson Harper. That's just how I roll. And you can get that right now on Serial Box, and especially pay attention to their stories because they're amazing. It's Tananarive and Steve Barnes. Thank you so much for joining me this week.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Good talking to you.